Hello and welcome to LSE Focus. The international break is finally over. Proper football is back this weekend and Liverpool are facing Huddersfield Town. Yeah, it's not the most exciting fixture to come back to, but to be honest, if recent history has taught us anything, it's that Liverpool don't actually want a big game when we come back from the international break. You know, time and again, we've had those 12:30 kickoffs away from home against one of our title rivals or top four rivals or a team that we are competing directly with in the league, and it's always ended up not only being a bad game, but quite often a bad result for Liverpool. You know, you only have to think back to last season and think about games like that 5-0 away at the Etihad to realise why actually playing away from home in big games after the international break is actually a very, very bad thing indeed. Unfortunately, it's not Liverpool who are going to have to do that this weekend. Instead, it's Chelsea and Man U who are playing that Saturday 12:30 kickoff. So, you know, good luck to them. I hope they enjoy their inevitable dull 0-0 where neither of them really come away with what they really wanted for the game. Meanwhile, Liverpool are playing on Saturday evening/afternoon, I guess, pre-evening, you might say, at 5:30 away to Huddersfield Town. And like I said, it is absolutely the ideal game that you want after an international break to help your players just build up a little bit of rhythm. You know, they don't have to come flying out the traps. They don't have to be at the absolute top of their game. They just need to be good enough to beat what's in front of them. But I do think it's still important that Liverpool do get a statement win out of this, because this fixture very much sets the tone for the next month or so. I think apart from the game against Arsenal away from home, it's not until that game against PSG away from home in the Champions League where Liverpool really have another big game, another game against a side that we are in direct competition with or anything for points and places in tables and stuff like that. So I think it is important that we just set the tone that this is going to be a run of fixtures where we're going to come out. We might not necessarily play our first team. We might throw in a few players. We might rotate a little bit, but we can still not only win, but win comfortably as well, because it is important to send out those kind of messages, especially when you think about how tight the league is at the moment as well. Goal difference is going to play a big factor. And when you think about how we're already 6 goals behind Man City on goal difference, that's not ideal, and it's not the kind of situation that you want to carry on towards the end of the season should things stay as tight as they are. So it is still important, despite the fact at the end of the day, just getting 3 points in your first game after the international break is always the priority. It is important that Liverpool lay down a marker and make a statement that they are back and they are ready to fight in the Premier League. So team news going into the game, obviously it wouldn't be the international break without players coming back injured, and there have been plenty of those after the last week or so. I think the list currently comes in at Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk and Naby Keita, who have all been sent home early from international duty with injuries of various bits of severity. You know, I think there's a few injuries that do kind of look like Jurgen Klopp has done a Pep Guardiola, or to cast it back even further, done a Sir Alex Ferguson, in just like kind of ringing up the countries and saying, okay, play them in the first game, but can we just pretend they have an injury and then bring them home early? You know, certainly the ones I think for Mohamed Salah and for Virgil van Dijk kind of smack of him and the manager for the international team just breaking a deal and being like, okay, let's go for something that still suits both parties, because neither of them have got really severe injuries. They don't necessarily look that bad. There hasn't been any news coming out suggesting that they're going to miss any games or anything like that. So I think both of them are fine. Sadio Mane looks like it might be a little bit more serious, even though it is only a broken thumb or something like that. So it feels a little bit weird, but it's possible that maybe he just needs some surgery to get it out of the way, and while he has that surgery, he can't play football or anything like that. The news articles around his injury seem to suggest that he would miss their second game against Sudan and then also the game against Huddersfield Town at the weekend, so it is possible that he misses out. And then Naby Keita is a very interesting one, because the most recent news as of yet that's come out today from Paul Joyce and various other reputable news outlets is that he is going for a scan to determine the severity of the injury. So that's certainly one to keep an eye on. I think even if the injury isn't that bad, it probably keeps him out of this game at the weekend, just even if he's absolutely fine as a precaution. But I think the most important thing is that this injury just is only like a week or something like that, because if it's just a week, he can miss 2 games. We've got the options. That's fine. If it's like a month or anything like that, it's less about the fact that we wouldn't have an extra player available and more about the fact that it stunts Naby Keita's development, because I think we all know there's a player in there. We all also know that it's going to take a little bit of time still for him to get up to speed with Klopp's system and, of course, up to speed with the Premier League, as all signings from other countries tend to need. So if he is injured for a while, it's a bit of a bummer in that respect. But in terms of the game this weekend, it's certainly not the worst thing in the world. In terms of other injury news, James Milner has already recovered from his hamstring injury reportedly and will apparently be fit to play this weekend, which is just the latest in a long line of news articles about how incredibly fit James Milner is and the kind of amazing shape that he keeps him in. At the end of the day, it's almost not a surprise that he's come back from injury this soon, because I think it's not since something like 2016, like the first game of a couple of seasons back, that Milner was last unavailable for a game through injury. So it is no surprise that he has made this speedy recovery. So that is certainly fantastic, especially when you consider the fact that Liverpool may not have Naby Keita to call upon this weekend, that James Milner, after his injury against Man City, should be absolutely fine. And then apart from that, I do think in terms of starting 11, we will start to see a little bit more rotation. I think we saw it out of necessity right at the end of the last period of matches, simply because we had so many big games in such a short space of time. I think now, when you think about how we went around it last season, is the kind of time where Jurgen Klopp is going to start rotating with a view to keeping the squad fresh all the way through the season. It's not just about getting them through this patch of games, although obviously as we go into the winter, that's when things do start to get more and more difficult and the games do start to pile up. It's about making sure that you don't burn out their players. So when it comes to February, March, April and May, they are still at the absolute top of their game. So I think this is where we start to see not just a few players coming in and out, but maybe things like 5 changes and the kind of thing that Klopp was doing at this stage last season. So as for the actual starting 11, I think you go with Alisson in goal, because why the hell wouldn't you? Centre-back pairing, Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk. You know, unless Van Dijk's injury is a little bit more severe than we expected and Jurgen Klopp just wants to give him a little bit of a rest, then maybe we see a Dejan Lovren or Joel Matip come in there, because, you know, Lovren and Matip, neither of them have been that bad this season. Certainly when they've been paired with either Gomez or Van Dijk. I think when they played together in the League Cup, it wasn't ideal, but alongside the players that have been part of our main back two so far this season, they look absolutely fine. So it could be Gomez and Lovren or something like that, but I think the most likely combination is, of course, Gomez and Van Dijk. I then think the fullbacks, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andrew Robertson, no argument there. You know, Robertson obviously had quite an intense time in the international break. I'm pretty sure he played both games with Scotland, but he should still be okay. He's a young player. You know, he looks after himself reasonably well, and I think there will be games later on where we do consider bringing in an Alberto Moreno at various stages and stuff like that, but not for this one, because we do just need to kind of hit the ground running after the international break. And then Trent, you know, he's great, play him, simple as that. And then the midfield, I think you go with Jordan Henderson at the base, and then I think Wijnaldum ahead of him. And then this is where it gets a little bit interesting. I think we might go with Xherdan Shaqiri in the midfield again, and I'll come on to why that is a little bit more later when I talk about Huddersfield and how they're set up. But I do think this is a slightly similar game to the one against Southampton, where Klopp kind of liked the idea of playing Shaqiri in a deeper role in that game. And while there were problems with it, I don't think he liked the amount of defensive work Shaqiri was doing. I don't think he liked how it impacted our shape and made us a little bit maybe too freeform to the point where it looked a little bit unorganised. I think he will have obviously worked on that in training since then, and this is the ideal game where he can try that system again. So I think Shaqiri goes in the midfield three along with Henderson at the base and Gini Wijnaldum, and then the front three, couple more changes here. I think you go with Salah, because this is a great game for him to get a little bit of confidence back. Obviously he gets that groin injury in the international break, but I'll be honest, I think he's fine. And then also, it's just a great game after the international break. He got those goals, he got a goal at least that helped him get back off the mark and give him a little bit more confidence. And against Huddersfield, hopefully it's the kind of opposition where he can get one or two goals to build up his confidence a little bit more. And then down the middle, I'm going to go with Daniel Sturridge, because, you know, I think he deserves his chance. He's earned it. And when we rotate, there's not really a problem with bringing Sturridge in anymore. I think if we're going to drop players out, Sturridge isn't exactly a drop off in terms of quality. He offers you goals. He's a very good technical footballer as well, and actually more than a lot of people give him credit for, he does fit into Jurgen Klopp's system quite well, even as the false number 9. And then at left wing, this is where it's a little bit more interesting, because I think you could possibly go with Firmino, but the problem with Firmino is, of course, that he's only just got back from international duty with Brazil. The difference now being that I think they played in Saudi Arabia the other night against Argentina, so it's not a huge layoff. So unlike usual international breaks where we're hesitant about using Firmino in the first game, he should be fine for this game. And I think it's either him or Mane, and just with this whole wrist or thumb injury thing that Mane's got, it makes sense to give him a little bit of rest, use him instead against Red Star, and give Firmino the shout this weekend. So taking a look at Huddersfield Town then, I think no disrespect to them, but it's probably fair to say they are the worst team that Liverpool will have faced so far this season. You know, they're 19th in the Premier League. They haven't won a game yet. They haven't had a single game where they've even scored more than one goal, and they are pretty leaky at the back as well. And that's why I'm saying we shouldn't just be using this as like an opportunity to get 3 points and get off the ground. We should be using this as a chance to get statement wins, because as we've seen so far from Liverpool this season, there have been quite a few games, pardon me, where our attack doesn't click, and that's kind of understandable at this stage of the season. It's later on in the season where things really start to kick into gear, but there still need to be a few games where we just blow the opposition away to maintain the fear factor, so that whenever any of the teams like Huddersfield play Liverpool, they're looking back and thinking, oh God, what about when they won 5-0 against Huddersfield, or beat Southampton 3-0, or 4-0 against West Ham? We need these kind of results to maintain our reputation as one of the steamroller sides in the league. And like I said, Huddersfield haven't won a single game, aren't really doing that well. They're in the relegation zone at the moment, and they're both struggling for goals and leaking at the back. So this is a perfect opportunity for Liverpool to get a statement win. And looking at how they're going to set up tactically, it's quite interesting that they have experimented with formation a little bit so far this season. I mean, it's not a huge surprise because results haven't been going their way, and they are obviously trying to find new and different ways to eventually get a result. And essentially this weekend, as much as they are desperate for a win, they're probably going to be looking for a draw, because a draw against Liverpool is the kind of result which will help morale and it will help them kick on. So I think they will probably start with a back three, although really, to be honest, it is more of a back five. It's something they tried against Burnley. It was interesting, they defended reasonably well against Burnley, but they also created a hell of a lot of chances as well. They had something like 19 shots in that game. So it clearly, I think, is a system that David Wagner will be looking at and seeing, let's have another go with that. The obvious problem with that is that Liverpool do particularly well against the back three. Not so well against the back five, because the strength of the back three is normally that teams like Arsenal or Hoffenheim last season use it, where it allows that they play out a little bit too much and end up leaving far too much space around the back. Huddersfield will probably pack that defensive three really, really tightly, and then make sure that the wing backs track back as well. So I think the most important thing for Liverpool is to make sure that we overload the key areas on the pitch. I think first of all, we need to pack the box, because Huddersfield will do that as well. They will look to get as many bodies in the box as possible. And when you look back at a game like the one they had against Man City, where they lost 6-1, that should be the blueprint for Liverpool, because Huddersfield will set up in a very similar way. They will set up to defend and hit on the counter. Man City just packed so many players in the box. It was also key that they had a lot of attacking players on the pitch as well, so they could afford to do that. They had two strikers, they had attacking fullbacks, they had plenty of attacking midfielders in the centre of the park as well, so they could afford to throw that many players onto the pitch in attacking areas. So I think it's quite important that Liverpool try and do the same, and that's one of the reasons that I think we should be playing Shaqiri in the midfield, and also looking at Wijnaldum and saying, you're playing box to box, potentially even as an extra number 10 this game, and then Jordan Henderson can just sit back and essentially play midfield on his own. He can play as a number 6 and a number 8 as and when he pleases. And I also just think attacking from multiple angles will be important as well, because it's so important that we make sure Huddersfield don't retain any shape. They don't settle into a rhythm where they feel comfortable, where they feel like they have Liverpool under control. And so it's important to make the pitch as big as possible. And in order to do that, we need the fullbacks to be bombing on. We need them to be getting down the line, hugging those touch lines and getting crosses in. And we also need players like Shaqiri coming in from deep and just creating from those inside areas just outside the box as well, because if we hit Huddersfield from multiple angles, they're never going to be able to find a shape that completely deals with what Liverpool do. And then finally, just getting the first goal and getting it in the first half will also be so important, because I think that's one of the reasons City beat them by such an impressive scoreline, is because they scored fairly early, they subdued Huddersfield, they subdued the Huddersfield crowd as well. Obviously it was at the Etihad, but you've got that away end as well, trying to G up the team as much as they possibly can. So if you score that first goal, then the floodgates can open, and if Liverpool attack well, if they attack intelligently, then we could get that big statement win that I think we do all crave this weekend. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then why not give it a like? If you're new around here as well, hit that subscribe button there. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back Saturday evening after we've hopefully battered Huddersfield. Until then, bye for now.